It was 3 feet long. You held it for the first time on Christmas morning, and it was almost as tall as you were. Your mother handed you the box, and the box was so big she had to use both arms. When you tore the wrapping paper off and saw what was inside, the artwork on that box, the 7 functions printed in bright red and white, the words Johnny 7 O.M.A. in letters you could read from across the room, you made a sound that your father still remembers. Not a word, a sound. The sound a boy makes when the thing he wanted more than anything in the world is suddenly in his hands. Before we dive in, hit subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you are watching from. You didn't open the box carefully. You tore it apart. And when you pulled the Johnny 7 out and held it up, you understood immediately that this was not a toy the way other things on the shelf were toys. This was a statement. 3 feet of plastic and metal, 4 pounds heavy, with a stock that fit against your shoulder and a barrel that extended past your reach, and 7 different things it could do. You didn't know all 7 yet. You'd figure them out over the next week, one by one, in the backyard and the basement and the living room, until your mother told you to take it outside because the caps were making the house smell. But in that first moment, standing in your pajamas on Christmas morning with a toy that weighed more than your sister's bicycle, you felt something that no phone or tablet or video game has ever made a child feel. You felt armed. You felt ready. You felt like the most powerful kid on your street, and you hadn't even loaded it yet. Every boy on the block knew about the Johnny 7, not because you told them, because the commercials told them. It ran on every channel during every cartoon, and the jingle was burned into your brain before you ever touched the thing. You saw the commercial and you stopped breathing. A kid on screen, a kid your age holding this enormous thing, firing missiles, launching grenades, pulling the pistol out and firing caps, and the announcer's voice saying 7 in a way that made 7 sound like the most important number in the history of numbers. You turned to your mother. You didn't ask. You told her, "I need that." Not want, need. And she looked at you the way mothers looked at every boy in America in the fall of 1964, because every mother in America was hearing the same sentence from her son at the same time. You found it in the Sears catalog before you found it in the store. Page 347 or wherever it was. You knew the page number by heart because you had turned to it so many times the paper was soft. There it was, in full color, next to the price that you hoped your parents would not notice was higher than everything else on the page. You circled it, not with a pencil, with a marker. Thick, dark, impossible to miss. And you left the catalog open to that page on the kitchen table every single day. From October until December, your mother moved it. You put it back. She moved it again. You put it back again. By December, the page was creased and stained, and the circle around the Johnny 7 was so thick it looked like a target, which in a way it was. By December 1964, it was the best-selling boys' toy in America. 2 million of them sold, every single one of them unwrapped by a boy who had spent weeks circling it in the catalog and months hoping his parents understood that nothing else would do. The first thing you did was find the caps, the pistol detached from the bottom, a separate piece that slid out and fit in your hand like a real sidearm. You loaded the caps, a roll of red paper dots that smelled like the 4th of July, and you pulled the trigger and the bang echoed off the houses and the smoke curled up from the barrel and your dog ran under the porch. That smell! You can smell it right now. Sulfur and paper and something metallic that stuck to your fingers for the rest of the day. No matter how many times you washed your hands, the caps were still there, on your fingertips, in your nose, In your clothes, your mother knew you'd been firing the pistol before you walked through the door because the smell walked in ahead of you. Then you discovered the rest. The bullets, white plastic cartridges that loaded into a magazine and fired one at a time when you pulled the bolt back and pressed the release. The rat-a-tat sound of the mechanism cycling was close enough to what you'd heard in war movies that you believed it. The green shells that launched from the front of the barrel, you aimed at a tin can in the backyard and the shell arced through the air and missed by 3 feet and hit the fence, and your father said, "Be careful," and you said, "I will," and you aimed again and missed again, and you didn't care because the launch was the point. The red missile that fired from the side, armor-piercing, the box said, which meant nothing to you except that it sounded important. The grenade that dropped from underneath, the bipod that folded down to turn the whole thing into a sniper position. 7 functions, 7 ways to defend your backyard against an enemy that existed only in your head, but was real enough to keep you outside until the street lights came on. You played with it every day, not for a week, not for a month, for years. The Johnny 7 wasn't the kind of toy you outgrew in a season. It was the kind of toy that grew with you. At 7, you used it to defend the sandbox. At 9, you used it in organized neighborhood battles, your team against the kids from 2 streets over, with rules that nobody agreed on and truces that lasted until someone got bored. At 11, you modified it, you painted the stock, you taped a flashlight to the barrel, you wrapped the grip in electrical tape because the plastic had cracked from 2 summers of hard use, and you weren't ready to let go. Not yet. Not when the kid across the street still had his, and the 2 of you still met in the backyard on Saturday mornings with your Johnnies and your helmets, and a plan that changed every week, but always ended the same way: dirty, tired, and late for dinner. The neighborhood battles were the best part. You planned them during school. You planned who was on which team, which yard was the battlefield, what the rules were, 1 hit and you are out, or 3 hits, or honor system, which meant nobody was ever really out because nobody ever admitted to being hit. You divided the Johnnies among the team. Whoever had one was the heavy artillery, and the kids without them carried cap pistols and sticks and whatever else they could find. The battles lasted all afternoon, through hedges, behind garbage cans, over fences that your mother told you not to climb. You crawled on your belly through wet grass with the Johnny 7 cradled in your arms, and for those hours, the neighborhood was Normandy, and you were the soldier who was going to win it. When it rained, you brought the battle indoors. The basement became the bunker. The couch became the barricade. The stairs became the hill you had to take. Your mother heard the caps going off in the basement, and she came to the top of the stairs and she said what she always said: "You are going to put a hole in something." And you said what you always said: "We are being careful." Neither of you believed it, but both of you accepted it because this was 1965 and the basement belonged to the boys on Saturday. The kid who did not have one stood on the sidewalk and watched. You remember him. He was the kid whose parents said no, whose mother did not approve, whose father thought it was too much. He stood on the edge of the yard, and you could see it in his face. Not anger, not sadness, something worse. The specific helpless longing of a boy watching other boys do something he could not join. Sometimes you let him hold yours just for a minute, just long enough to feel the weight and pull the bolt and hear the click. The look on his face when he handed it back told you everything you needed to know about what the Johnny 7 meant. It was not a toy, it was membership, it was belonging, it was the difference between being in the game and watching it from the sidewalk. The man who made it had a story that none of you knew. His name was Henry Orenstein, and he was born in a small town in Poland in 1923. When the war came, he was a teenager. He was sent to concentration camps, not one, not two, but 5. He survived by telling the guards he was a scientist. He wasn't, he was a boy, but the lie kept him alive long enough for the Soviet army to find him. He lost his parents, he lost most of his family. He came to America in 1947 with nothing except the fact that he was still breathing. He opened a grocery store, he sold it, he started a toy company in Elizabeth, New Jersey called Deluxe Toy Creations. And from that small shop, this man, this survivor who had watched the worst of humanity, began making toys that brought joy to millions of children. The Johnny 7 was his masterpiece. 2 million were sold in 1 year. It was the best-selling boys' toy in America, designed by a man who had once been a boy with nothing. He did not stop there. He created Johnny Lightning, the die-cast cars that competed with Hot Wheels. He created Susie Homemaker for girls. He held over 100 patents. Mattel, the largest toy company in the world, had meetings specifically about how to stop him. They could not. He was too fast, too creative, too driven by something they did not understand. He sold his company for $2 million. Then he bought it back for $49 million. Then the company went bankrupt in 1973, and the man who had survived 5 concentration camps survived that too. In his 60s, he discovered poker. He found televised poker boring because you could not see the cards. So he invented the whole card camera, the camera embedded in the table that shows the audience what each player is holding. That invention changed poker forever. He was inducted into the Poker Hall of Fame. He sponsored the winning car at the Indianapolis 500. In his 90s, he hosted high-stakes poker games 3 times a week in his apartment overlooking Central Park. His eyesight was failing, so he trusted the other players to call his cards honestly. They never lied to him, not once, because everyone at that table knew his story. He died on December 14, 2021. He was 98 years old. His wife said he used to sing himself to sleep with a jingle from a toy line he had helped bring to America. Transformers. More than meets the eye. You didn't know any of this when you were 8 years old, standing in your backyard with a Johnny 7 on your shoulder. You didn't know that the toy in your hands was made by a man who had survived things no child should ever have to imagine. You just knew it was the greatest toy you'd ever held, the heaviest, the longest, the one with the most functions, the one that made you feel like you could handle anything the backyard threw at you. They don't make anything like it anymore. Not because they can't, because they won't. 3 feet long, 4 pounds, caps that smelled like smoke, a missile that actually launched, a grenade that actually dropped. 7 functions in a single toy that a boy could carry on his shoulder and feel like he owned the world. Try finding that at Target. Try finding it on Amazon. You'll find a plastic thing the size of your forearm that makes electronic sounds and requires 3 batteries and breaks before New Year's. It comes in a blister pack that you rip open and throw away. There is no box big enough to sleep in. There is no weight. There is no smell. There is no smoke curling from the barrel while your dog runs under the porch. There is nothing that requires a boy to go outside and use his body and come home dirty and tired and smelling like caps. That is not a Johnny 7. That is not even in the same conversation. Some of you still have yours in a closet, in a box in the garage. The stock is cracked. The pistol is missing. The caps ran out 30 years ago, and you can't buy more because nobody makes them for a toy that has not been sold since 1964. But you kept it. You couldn't throw it away, because throwing away a Johnny 7 is like throwing away a piece of yourself, the piece that stood in the backyard at 8 years old with the sun going down and the caps still smoking and the whole world fitting neatly between the fence and the back door. Your father understood the Johnny 7 in ways he never said out loud. He was the one who bought it, not your mother. He went to the store and he saw the box and he picked it up and he felt the weight and he looked at the picture on the front and he thought about the boy waiting at home who needed this more than a bicycle or a baseball glove or anything else on the Christmas list. Your father may have served. Your father may have held something real that weighed 4 pounds and had a stock that fit against his shoulder. He never talked about it. But when he watched you carry the Johnny 7 across the yard on a Saturday morning, something crossed his face that you were too young to read. Pride maybe, or memory, or the quiet satisfaction of knowing that his son was playing war in a backyard instead of fighting one in a jungle. Some of you tried to give yours to your sons. You pulled it out of storage in the 80s or the 90s, and you handed it to a boy who lived in a world of Nintendo and laser tag and toys that ran on batteries and made sounds that did not smell like anything. He looked at it. He held it. He said it was heavy. And then he put it down and went back to his controller, and you stood there holding a 3-foot piece of your childhood that your son had just rejected in under a minute. You did not blame him. You could not. He did not grow up in the same backyard. He did not have the same neighbors. He did not hear the same commercials or circle the same catalog or stand in the same living room on Christmas morning and make the same sound you made when the box was too big for your arms. The Johnny 7 was your toy, not his. And that was the moment you understood that some things cannot be passed down. They can only be remembered. Some of you lost yours. Your mother gave it to Goodwill when you left for college, or it ended up in a garage sale, or it just disappeared the way things from childhood disappear, not with a moment, but with an absence you do not notice until 20 years later when someone says the words Johnny 7 and your hands remember the weight before your brain remembers the name. 4 pounds, 3 feet, 7 functions, and a feeling that no toy made since has ever come close to matching. If you had a Johnny 7 O.M.A, tell us in the comments, do you still have yours and what was the first function you tried?